Alright, let's look at Standard 10, Substandard E. Explain the impeachment of Andrew Johnson in relationship to Reconstruction. Forgive me if I refer to him as Andrew Jackson. That's an error. It's Andrew Johnson. I don't know why I do that. I've been doing that for 10, 15 years now. It's just habit or little error making here. I guess it's the A and the J. A lot of students get these guys confused, but don't do it. You know, Johnson, remember the last name Johnson and first name Andrews is impeachment during Reconstruction. Don't get Jackson in there. Alright, so we're going to talk about his impeachment. We have already. We're going to do it here as well. So here's Andrew Johnson. He's going to be impeached. That's the focus of this standard here, Substandard E. What is impeachment? What does it mean? Well, the definition is that it's a formal process in which an official is accused of unlawful activity or high crimes and misdemeanors. You know, when our founding fathers were writing the Constitution in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, come up with this process of impeachment. Impeachment process is a way to remove a president who was not, it was violating high crimes and misdemeanors, these laws that they were doing something unlawful as an activity. This is a way that Congress could get rid of the president if he was doing something that violated the Constitution, to keep him from becoming a tyrant like King George III or someone else. But impeach comes from a Latin root word that means caught or trapped. The characteristics of the impeachment process under the Constitution give sole power of impeachment, that is, accusing a federal official, especially the president, of doing something wrong, to the House of Representatives. So the impeachment proceedings must first start and originate in the House of Representatives, and then they will issue article or articles, more than one, of impeachment, which are much like indictments in a criminal trial, that accuses the federal official or the President of the United States of wrongdoing, of criminal activity or high crimes and misdemeanor. And then this impeachment will order a trial. And then, according to the Constitution, the trial where the president or other federal official will be tried, found guilty or not guilty, will be in the Senate. There will be 100 jury members, pretty much. There's 2 from each state. There's 50 states. Back at this time, there were not 50 states when Andrew Johnson was impeached. But an example of an impeachment would be Bill Clinton. Andrew Johnson's our first president impeached. Bill Clinton will be the second president impeached, and President Clinton was accused of lying under oath and obstruction of justice, but he was acquitted. That means found not guilty in the Senate. Non-examples of impeachment are Richard Nixon. Although he was suspected of doing unlawful activity with the Watergate scandal, and we're going to talk about that too. I think that's Unit 10. President Nixon resigned before being impeached by the House of Representatives, or charged by the House of Representatives, so he was never impeached. So this is pretty much the vocabulary. What impeachment means is a constitutional process of getting rid of federal officials or the president if they're doing something illegal or lawful, high crimes and misdemeanors. Okay, so we talked about this Tenure of Office Act in March the 3rd that was created to limit President Andrew Johnson. These guys here, these radical Republicans, we talked about them. Thaddeus Stevens, a Republican from Pennsylvania in the House of Representatives, he was the leader there. It's these guys here, and Charles Sumner, a Republican from Massachusetts. Sumner's the one that got beat up by Preston Brooks after the Kansas-Nebraska popular sovereignty bleeding Kansas ordeal. But Charles Sumner here is also a radical Republican. It's these 2 guys here that are really behind this impeachment proceedings of Andrew Johnson. And it's going to be this tug of war, and we talked about this pooling between President Johnson, Andrew Johnson, and presidential Reconstruction, his plan, as opposed to the radical Republican Reconstruction in Congress at the time, which was really these guys here, Charles Sumner representing the Senate, Thaddeus Stevens in the House of Representatives. So that's how it's related. His impeachment is related to Reconstruction because of this fight that was going on over who's going to carry out Reconstruction. Is it going to be the President of the United States, or is it going to be Congress? And and we talked about these radical Republicans and this argument between them and Andrew Johnson. So we talked about how these guys passed this Tenure of Office Act, basically restricted President Johnson from firing officials without getting Senate approval. You know, these officials were nominated usually by Abraham Lincoln. You know, the one he's going to fire was nominated by Abraham Lincoln, and the Senate confirmed Abraham Lincoln's appointment, and then he was put in office. Now, when you confirmed by the Senate, that's going to be a checks and balances that we talked about in the beginning of the class under the Constitution. But anyway, once he's confirmed, under this law, the Tenure of Office Act of 1867, President Johnson could not fire someone who had been confirmed by the Senate unless he got approval from the Senate to fire them. So this law was meaning to limit Andrew Johnson from getting rid of people who were pretty much Republicans that were a radical nature. So these guys were behind this law. So Johnson vetoes this Tenure of Office Act, and then with these two guys here in Congress, they overrode his veto. Again, checks and balances, and you have to have a 2/3 vote in each house, the House and the Senate, to override a presidential veto. You're going to learn this stuff in civics. Okay, so this law comes in effect. So the first thing Johnson's going to do is he's going to fire someone that's going to violate this Tenure of Office Act that was created by these radical Republicans. So, and he's going to fire this guy here, Secretary of War Edwin Stanton, who's actually nominated by President Abraham Lincoln and confirmed by the Senate. So under the law, Johnson could not fire him unless he got approval from the United States Senate, which would have been to get approval from Charles Sumner and his radical Republicans in the Senate. But instead of doing that, Andrew Johnson went ahead anyway and wanted to challenge this Tenure of Office Act and fired Edwin Stanton. When he did, the House of Representatives, following this process set up in the U.S. Constitution with Thaddeus Stevens here from Pennsylvania, they impeached the President of the United States. This is the first time in U.S. history that a president has been impeached, and this is Andrew Johnson. There were 13 articles of impeachment, and all they were reworded, and every one of them meant basically that he violated this Tenure of Office Act by firing Edwin Stanton. So there's really only one. But anyway, it goes to the Senate, as the Constitution says. The trial goes to the Senate here, and then the Senate holds the trial, and they determine whether he's guilty or not guilty. And in weighing whether Andrew Johnson was guilty or not guilty, the senators acquitted President Johnson, found him not guilty by one vote. So what that means was he would stay in office. He would not be removed. However, at this point, Andrew Johnson had become a lame duck and really lost a lot of his power, and then these radical Republicans take over Reconstruction. So President Andrew Johnson is going to become the first president in U.S. history to be impeached, and these radical Republicans are the ones who impeached President Johnson. So they were after him. These two guys here, these radical Republicans who wanted social equality for African Americans rather than just a rapid reintroduction of southern states and united this country, just that. They wanted more than that. They wanted social equality for African Americans. They're going to push through the 13th Amendment, ending slavery, the 14th Amendment giving citizenship and equality to African Americans, due process by the states, and then the 15th giving African American male suffrage with the right to vote. And they're going to dominate Reconstruction from then on. And here's a picture, here's a painting of the impeachment trial of Johnson. Here's a ticket that a lot of people got to go see it from the balcony, the impeachment of Johnson. And again, you know, for people who think their vote doesn't count, Johnson, he was acquitted by one vote. There has never been a president sitting that was impeached and removed. Bill Clinton in '98, I believe, was the only other president to be impeached but was not removed from office. And then Richard Nixon resigned before he could be impeached. Okay, I believe we've met Our objective in this standard was to explain the impeachment of Andrew Johnson and its relationship to Reconstruction. Really important to its relationship to Reconstruction is that the president and these radical Republicans in Congress were fighting over who was going to reconstruct the United States. So it's these guys here in Congress, Thaddeus Stevens, Charles Sumner, and their groups, more of those guys, and the president fighting over who's going to reconstruct the United States of America. All right, so I think we've done that. Impeachment of Johnson's relationship to Reconstruction. Ask questions in class. Rewatch this video. Good luck on the quiz. Good luck on the test. Good luck on the EOCT.